Dear ladies and gentlemen, today I would like to say a few words to Western right-wing conservative intellectuals. Well, I know that absolute majority of Western intellectuals are left-wing and liberal, so to say. And I'm sometimes addressing them as well, although it's a waste of time. However, today I would like to address conservative and right-wing intellectuals of the West. What am I going to talk about today? Today I would like to discuss your attitude towards Vladimir Putin and contemporary Russian Federation. In fact, yours truly is kind of conservative Western intellectual as well. However, being of European background, I was born in Siberia, spent decades in the Soviet Union, those days it was the Soviet Union, and later managed to move to the West, where I spent most of my life. Due to the fact that I had an experience of life in the USSR, and also due to the fact that I am political scientist and historian, my attitude towards Vladimir Putin and his regime is significantly different from yours. It's not a secret that the majority of conservative right-wing Western politicians and intellectuals tend to support Vladimir Putin and even to admire him. By the way, I should probably apologize for smoking, but maybe I shouldn't. You know why? My ancestors, just like your ancestors, who created this civilization, the civilization that is hated by millions and millions of people who, at the same time, enjoy its benefits. So, that civilization, or this civilization, although in a state of decay, is pretty attractive. And our ancestors who created this civilization, they were smoking, they were drinking alcohol, they were eating meat, including pork, and even more than that, when they saw attractive women, they didn't hesitate telling them that they were gorgeous, beautiful, charming, etc., without a risk being taken to the court for sexual harassment. But that was in the past, and let's switch back to the present. Alas, my dear ladies and gentlemen, you lost our civilization, you lost more or less your countries, many of you lost your children and grandchildren if you have one. We are not going to go into the details whose fault is that. It's definitely your fault, partially. And partially, by the way, the fault of the Soviet Union and Comintern. The Soviet Union was spending billions and billions of dollars stolen from the Russian people and other people of the Soviet Union to infiltrate the West, to infiltrate Western politicum, and first and foremost to infiltrate Western schools and universities. And alas, whether we want it or not, they were successful. As a result, we are losing our civilization and the generations that are coming after us. I would be even more pessimistic than average and say that most likely this loss is irreversible. No, well, there are certain chances that it will go into reverse mode and will be partially restored, but only partially. Complete restoration is already impossible. And because you know that you lost your countries and your kids, you are desperately looking for some external force that, as you believe, can help you. or to serve as an alternative to contemporary left-wing agenda and left-wing politics. That's natural, and why not? However, unfortunately, Russia is a wrong place to look for an ally. I would rather recommend to search for allies in Eastern Europe or East Central Europe, in the countries like Poland, Croatia, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and a couple other countries. But now let's get back to Russia. Many of you believe that Russia is ruled by conservative Christians who value old European values, Christian values, or Judeo-Christian values, such as family, for example, who are homophobic. Let me use this word because I still want to be more or less politically correct. And you think that they are an alternative to the New World Order. What are your reasons to believe that? Well, first and foremost, you know that some of right-wing politicians were or are getting financial support from the Kremlin. You know that, right? I actually do not blame those politicians in the situation when no European or American banks would support them in their fight for their countries. If someone is offering them money, then why not taking it? But taking money is one thing. Another thing is to start admiring the ideology of those who are supporting you financially. Here is a booby trap. Well, why do you believe that Russia is a Christian, traditional, conservative society? Well, because some of you are listening to their radio or TV and listening to the speeches of Vladimir Putin and his entourage. Unfortunately, I hate saying that, but they are fooling you. Because everything, absolutely everything, that has to do with Russia, with contemporary Russia, is soaking with lies. Yes, you saw pictures of Putin in a church. I would call it vampires in the church. They pretend being Christians. Oh, they are not. They all grew up in the Soviet Union, and most of them served in KGB. One of the major tasks of which was to fight against religion in general and Christianity in particular. So they are not Christians, no matter how they pretend to be. Second thing, you believe that they're homophobic. Well, I don't want to say that it's good or bad, but you believe that they are. However, that's not true either. The most homophobic speeches were made in Russia by those who are gays, well-known gays. Also, homosexual rape is happening not only in Russian police as a torture, it's happening all over Russia. But also in many cases, it's a part of initiation process if you want to go to the top levels of the society. I'm not going to talk about other things that are absolutely common among the contemporary Russian so-called elite. But in the good old days, what they're doing was called in conservative West a sodomy. Oh, you probably don't believe it, but that's your problem. You can do your own research. It will take some time, but you will find some facts, or actually many facts, that would support what I'm talking about. Not to mention that they all are involved in satanic rituals. Again, if you do your own research, you will find confirmation of what I'm telling you. I'm not going to do your research for you. What I will do, I will show you footage of one of their new churches, cathedrals, that has nothing to do even with Orthodox Christianity. It's a satanic temple. Here we go. So that was about the so-called Russian conservatism, which is lie, absolute lie, like everything that is connected with Russia. Now a few words about poor Ukraine. What is really interesting, the majority of population in the West are supporting Ukraine, at least in the form of flying Ukrainian flags, putting Ukrainian symbols on their avatars in Facebook, but many people are supporting with money, and there are quite a few people who went there as volunteers to help Ukraine withstand the invasion of Russian Federation. It's very sad, but the majority of conservatives are not among those who are supporting Ukraine. The majority of conservatives, for some reason, believe that Ukraine is a Nazi state, that there are good Ukrainians who are fighting in Donbass and Lugansk to join Russia, and there are bad Ukrainians or Western Ukrainians who are evil Nazis, corrupt evil Nazis, and who are those against whom good Putin is fighting. Another mixture of lies, absolute lies. First and foremost, the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February this year has all implied proven that absolute majority of Ukrainian people are united against that invasion. I will tell you something that you won't hear about in the Russian media and even in conservative media. Half of those Ukrainians fighting against Russia, against Russian invasion, have Russian last names and are Russian speakers. Many of them are simply ethnic Russians, but Ukrainian citizens, and they are fighting against Russian invasion. You call Ukrainian government a corrupt Nazi government. Okay, let's forget about corruption. And let's not talk about corruption, because look at contemporary America, look at contemporary Western Europe. Just let's leave that aside. But let's switch to the so-called Nazism in Ukraine. First, how can it be a Nazi state if a considerable amount of government officers, high-ranking government officers, and even the president are Jews or people of Jewish descent? Jewish Nazis? Nazi Jews? What are you talking about? Ukraine has nothing to do with Nazism, and nobody, no single ethnic group is discriminated in that country. Yes, they want to speak Ukrainian language, it's their choice, and it's none of our business. By the way, I'm not Ukrainian, not at all, and of course I'm not Russian, as I mentioned before. But that doesn't matter, it's not about me, it's about Ukraine. Ukrainians, in turn, calling Russia a fascist Russia, and they are wrong as well. And you know why? because contemporary Russian Federation is way worse than a fascist or Nazi state. Although fascist and Nazi states were quite disgusting, but Russia is worse. And how is it worse, you think? I can tell you. Because the Nazis and fascists, by the way, you probably don't know, but fascist and Nazi movements were left-wing movements. And up until 1938, they were admired by liberal Western intelligentsia, or intellectuals to be more specific. But those disgusting left-wing regimes at least took a bit of care about their own people. Russian elite doesn't care about Russian people at all. They are treating them worse than animals. They are treating them probably like dirt or garbage. But that's of course Russian problem. On the other hand, some of their actions remind us of what is known as the Nazi atrocities, like, for example, mass murdering of civilians, or extracting golden crowns and bridges from people's mouths, sometimes after shooting those people, sometimes even before that. Many of you believe in the Kremlinite lies about 14,000 Ukrainians killed in Donbass by Ukrainian army. That's a lie. Yes, Ukrainian army tried to put down the separatist pro-Russian movement there, and there were some casualties, collateral damage on both sides, but what you do not know is that thousands of people living in Donbass were tortured to death and brutally murdered by the pro-Russian separatist regimes. And that brutality included, but was not limited to, impaling people or disemboweling them still alive. You don't want to know about things that they were doing. And by the way, I strongly recommend you to check this book, which exists not only in English but in many other languages. If you want to know the truth, of course, or at least the elements of the truth. Also, Putin, in his speeches, often quotes Adolf Hitler and some Russian fascists like Ilyin, for example. So do not, please, 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 do not be blinded by the lies coming from the Kremlin. Ukraine must be supported, and the so-called Russian Federation must lose this war. And by the way, the defeat of Russian Federation means the defeat of the European and American left, as well as the defeat of the so-called Democratic Party in the USA. But this is a more complicated issue, and we will talk about that a little bit later. Have a lovely and successful day. Bye-bye. Believe it or not, but I forgot something else. There is one more opinion, very popular among Western conservatives. According to that opinion, Russia was mistreated after 1991. That is another lie. Russia was not mistreated. On the contrary, it got significant Western help, and the leaders of the so-called post-communist Russia were treated as the equal members of the civilized society. And, as the experience has shown, it was a huge mistake. It was not appreciated and used to start invading other countries. More than that, the West was giving a blind eye to Russian invasion of Moldova, two Russian invasions of Georgia, and the first Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2014. And well, here are the results. We are now at the edge of the nuclear war. Congratulations. Now that's really it. Bye-bye.